Hi guys, I'm Ivory and today I'm going to be doing a 2-day wear test on the Huda Beauty GloWish Multidew Skin Tint. I'll be showing you how this applies initially as well as checking in throughout the day to show you how it wears. I do want to clarify that a 2-day wear test does not mean that I wear it for 48 hours. I get a lot of comments surprisingly saying like, ew, who would wear it for 2 days straight? What I mean is I wear it on 2 separate days and each day I wear it for about 10 hours. And for anyone that is new, I have oily and acne prone skin, so my wear tests are catered towards people with similar skin types. So if you find that this review is helpful, I will link up in the cards a playlist of all the other foundations and or products that I've done a wear test on. All right, so this is what the component looks like. I got the shade 05 medium. I will say right now, if you use me as a shade reference and you're looking for an exact match, I would go with light medium, but as you know, I have an incurable issue called I think I'm tanner than I actually am syndrome. So I went up a shade to medium because I just want to look tanner than I actually am. But if you're looking for an exact match, I would go with light medium. I did go ahead and already prepped my skin and I moisturized. I used the Ordinary Mineral UV Filters SPF 30 with antioxidants. I don't know if I like this yet because when you apply it, sorry, this is like a mini review within a review. As you blend it, you can see that at first it turns a little bit purple and then afterwards, as you continue to blend it, it will become white. So you can see how my face compares to my hand. There is a white cast. For a lot of people, that white cast is a no-go, and I totally understand. But for me, I just don't really care because on the days that I wear this alone and I wear no makeup, I don't really care about I don't know, I just don't care. And then on the days where I am wearing makeup with this, I mean, the makeup is gonna cover the white cast, so I still don't care. For me, the sole purpose is I just wanna get some SPF on my face, but just know that if you're interested in that product, white cast. I'm gonna go ahead and prime half my face. I'm using the Essence My Skin Perfector Tinted Primer, and this is in the shade Medium Beige. I like this one because it does blur and smooth my skin out a little bit, but it does have a very, very tiny tint. So some of the redness from my acne will look toned down, which is gonna be helpful because the skin tint that I'm using already has sheer coverage. So I just wanted to add a little bit more coverage to some of my acne. And I'm gonna apply this to the center of my face and then move the product outward. And then on either side of my face, I'm going to be using a brush and a sponge just to see how this product applies with 2 very common applicators. The brush that I'm using is the Sigma F47, which is the multitasker. And then the sponge that I'm using is the Juno & Co. microfiber sponge. Both of these products I will link in my description box. The foundation is a fragrance-free, light coverage skin tint foundation that instantly brightens with near neutral undertones that leave skin with a dewy finish. It is waterproof and sweat-proof in 13 shades. It's vegan and cruelty-free. The product contains 1.35 fluid ounces and retails for $37. All right, so this is one layer of the foundation. I will say that it doesn't blend as easily as I would like. As soon as it lays down, I just feel like a lot doesn't go a long way. So instead of using 2 pumps, I actually had to use 3. As you can see, very dewy, very luminous. The coverage, of course, you can still see my acne, so sheer, very sheer coverage, which is exactly what they said would it be, so they weren't lying. It slightly evened out everything and then just made me look dewy. I'm gonna go ahead and add a second layer just to see how this builds up. All right, so I added the second layer only to my cheeks and a little bit to my chin right here because I just wanted to cover my acne a little bit more. The second layer, it really helped. You can, I mean, obviously this is a huge bump, but you can see the redness of this one is totally gone and the coverage down here as well is a lot better. I would say the second layer gave me light medium-ish coverage, but more light than medium. So it is a little bit buildable. As far as how it's laying on my skin, I mean, the thing about dewy foundations is I feel like when you have texture and pores, it really emphasizes that. But at the same time, I knew what I was getting into. I knew that this was a glowy foundation. But other than that, I think it looks pretty good. It's not laying on my acne super weird. It looks pretty smooth on my nose and in the areas where I get creasy, but you know, this is just the beginning. But I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward doing the rest of my makeup. All the products that I'm using will be listed in my description box below. All right, so this is what I look like with everything on. I do want to say that I did set everywhere that I had concealer. So a little bit on my forehead, the bridge of my nose, my under eyes and my chin, and a little bit here on the sides of my mouth. And then the rest of my face, I left it alone, but it is lightly set because my blush and my bronzer are powder products. So by applying them, it does lightly set my foundation. But there are some areas such as right here, right under my blush, where I did not set it at all. So I can feel what the foundation is in its natural state. And I will say that it is a little bit sticky. Like if I take my hair, yeah, you can see it's a little sticky. I'm still not gonna set this area just because I feel like if I set it, it takes away the thing that is nice about the skin tint, which is that glow. And I don't wanna take away that glow. So I wanna keep it as much as I can. Otherwise, if I set it, it's like, why didn't I just get a matte foundation? But I did wanna disclaim that to you, that if you use this product and you don't set it, there's gonna be a little bit of that tacky feeling. But with all my makeup on, especially since they are powder products, my texture and my pores are not huge anymore. They look normal and everything looks really nice and smooth. I really can't see any issues anywhere as of yet, but it's early. I'm gonna check back in a couple hours in natural lighting to show you how it's wearing. All right, it is a little under the 4-hour mark. Typically I would wait a little longer, but I have to get to dinner because today is me and my husband's wedding anniversary. So I'm afraid of coming home and there won't be any daylight left. I did have to wear a mask today for probably a total of 10 minutes just because I had to drop my car off at the dealership. So just a little bit has rubbed off on my nose and a little bit right here on my ginormous blemish. But you know, that's expected. One thing I do want to say is that I do not like the primer that I used with this foundation. This is the side with primer. It's the one with the mole on it. And the foundation is breaking up a lot more than this side. This side actually looks pretty good. But when you go to this side, I can see in this area specifically that it's breaking up. I'm seeing those lines of cracking. And earlier I did see those missing dots of foundation. It seems like as my oils come through, those dots aren't as prevalent, but now I'm getting those lines of cracking on my chin. And I can see the difference on my upper lip as well. You can see like this side, it's starting to break down, whereas this side is still looking good. It still looks smooth and together. So tomorrow, no primer, or maybe a different primer. As far as oil production though, I don't think it looks that bad. I don't look overly shiny or greasy, and the oils that are coming through are mixing pretty decently with the foundation because it's not breaking up really, except for this little area over here. From what I can see, I would say that this is the better side because it doesn't have the primer, but you could see that everything is holding together really nicely. Pretty minimal wear in my T-zone. It actually isn't looking too bad. It's not settling too much in my fine lines. So I'm gonna go ahead and blot. You guys know I like to blot earlier rather than later now, just because I feel like when you blot, when you're less oily, you reduce the risk of your foundation transferring too much onto the blotting sheets. Before I used to blot at the 10-hour mark, and I noticed that the foundation would be so broken up and greasy that it was past the point of actually salvaging it. And realistically, you wouldn't blot at the end of the day anyways. You would blot midday when you're just starting to get a little bit shiny. I will list my favorite blotting sheets in my description box below. All right, so I did go ahead and blot. Blotting didn't really lift off the foundation. Like everything still looks good. There's no missing patches of foundation. At least I can't see them. So I would say that this foundation does decently with touch-ups, which is just a good to know because some foundations I can't say the same for. And I just have to know that when the foundation looks bad, there's no point of touching it up. It's better to just take off the makeup, but this one did pretty well with blotting. That is it for this check-in. I will come back at the 10-hour mark to give you my final thoughts on day one. All right, so it is 9.5 hours. Hopefully you'll forgive me. I'm just half hour short from the 10-hour mark. Tomorrow I will definitely wear it for 10 hours. Overall, you know, very glowy, but I'm not mad at it because it's in the name. You know what you're getting. And even though I'm very shiny, the foundation itself, the product itself stayed together pretty nicely. There are some areas where looking a little rough. I'll zoom in a second, but in general, it stayed together quite nice. So after my last check-in, I did have to wear my mask for about a half hour or so. So some more foundation did rub off. Tomorrow I will not be wearing a mask, so I will not be having this issue at all. So we will see how the foundation just wears without any complications. So I do see that some of the foundation has worn off. That's to be expected when you wear a mask. The chin is not looking great. It is very broken up and splotchy. Right under my lip, there's a big chunk of foundation missing. And the thing is, it's kind of hard to tell whether or not it's the foundation's fault or the concealer's fault because I can see right here next to my chin, the coverage is light, whereas here there's more coverage. That's because there's concealer under it. So I think tomorrow, I just want to see how the foundation wears alone. I'll still set it and everything, but no concealer. And even though both sides are looking kind of rough, definitely the primer side looks worse. So the primer that I used, which one was it? The Essence Tinted Primer. I do not recommend it with this foundation. It broke it down way more than the side without any primer, and it broke down faster. On my nose, a little bit of coverage is lost, of course, from the mask, but the sides of it have pretty much stayed together. It is a little bit shiny in the crevice of my nose, but it stayed together. You can see my cheeks as well. For the most part, pretty good. And it also didn't settle into my forehead wrinkle. And same thing on my smile line. I see the faintest line, but it's not bad at all. The T-zone a little bit broken up, but I'm not too mad about it. So what I've learned from today, first of all, I don't know if I prefer the coverage from the sponge or the brush. I completely forgot to take note of that, but I feel like they were pretty much the same. Question mark? Again, no primer tomorrow. And because the chin area seems to be the worst part, tomorrow I want to try no concealer in just this area because everywhere else is fine. That is it for today. Good night. All right, it is day 2, so based on what I've learned from yesterday, we're skipping primer today. However, I do want to add loose setting powder under my foundation, only on half my face. I always have to try a product doing this because oftentimes adding loose setting powder underneath foundation can help prolong your oils from coming through. It is a great hack for people that are oily. So my favorite one to use is the Dermablend loose setting powder. So what I do is I take a puff. This one is by Tarte Beauty, and I just grab a little bit, and then I'm just gonna press that into my skin. And you don't have to put this everywhere. I concentrate this on the areas where I get the shiniest and where my makeup tends to break down the fastest. So basically just the center of my face. And you really do not need a lot. There shouldn't be a bunch of loose powder just sitting on top of your face. It should really be pressed in. Otherwise, in my experience, if you put too much on, the foundation just looks really lumpy. But this is my entire skin prep, so I'm gonna go in with the skin tint now. I'm gonna go ahead and use the Juno & Co microfiber sponge for my entire face because I'm just used to putting on foundation with a sponge, and I'm only gonna do one layer of foundation today. Okay, so this is one layer. I do have some residual, but we're gonna leave it as is because I've noticed, and this is especially true for more luminous, dewy foundations, to make those types of foundations with that type of finish work on me, usually the less product, the better. With matte foundations, I can get away with putting on more if I want to, but the luminous ones, if I try to pile it on, it often will not wear as well. So that's why I wanna only wear one layer of foundation. But I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward doing the rest of my makeup. All of the products that I use are the same that I use on day 1. All right, so I did the rest of my makeup. I kept it super minimal. I only have concealer on my under eyes because yesterday there was nothing wrong with my under eyes. And I also don't put foundation under my eyes anyways because I know I'm gonna have concealer. But I didn't add concealer to my forehead, my nose, my chin, nothing. That is all the skin tint. And I did set the areas. And then everything else I kept really minimal, so I do still feel the skin tint unset in a lot of areas. Even areas where there is powder on top of it, like such as the blush. Even though it is a powder blush, because I didn't go in with setting powder first, I do still feel just a very slight tackiness. Not as much as down here because this is completely unset, but it is only slightly set. But I wanted to keep it minimal so that way the focus is just on the foundation. But that is it for now. I will come back at the halfway point again to show you how it looks. All right, so this is the 5-hour mark. Oil wise, I am shiny. It especially is noticeable to me in person, at least in the crevices of my nose. So I definitely want to blot right now, but the foundation is staying together so nicely. Today's going way better than yesterday. I mean, yesterday wasn't going that bad, but today's even better. So on my chin, I have no concealer whatsoever. This is just the skin tint, and then I powdered it. It is not breaking up at all. No cracking, no separating. It's not looking weird on my acne or bunching. It looks nice and smooth. It's just shiny. Same thing on my upper lip. You guys know that I often get those missing holes of foundation, and that's not happening here. The cheeks almost always look good. Nothing ever really happens to my cheeks. The T-zone right here, a little bit of wear and tear, but overall pretty smooth, and it's not settling into my fine lines or wrinkles, which is great. So I think it's actually wearing really well on me. As far as having powder underneath the foundation, you know, it's really hard to tell. I don't think it's really made too much of a difference at this point. Maybe I will see it more at the 10-hour mark, but right now I can't see any differences between either side. All right, so I just went ahead and blotted, and the foundation looks pretty much brand new. Just like on day 1, the blotting sheets did not pick up any of the foundation. Everything has pretty much, for the most part, stayed put, which is surprising considering some areas are unset, so I thought it would lift off, but it's all still there. So everything is looking really nice and refreshed, but that is it for now. I will come back at the 10-hour mark to give you my final thoughts. All right, we have reached 10 hours. For the most part, this actually stayed together pretty well. On my chin, I do see a little bit of cracking, and it did break up the whole mouth area for that region. However, However, because this is a very sheer coverage product, it's not as noticeable. So I'm a little bit more forgiving about that. So I do still see it, but it's not super noticeable because it still blends pretty well with my actual skin. My nose still looks pretty good. It's all staying together. And again, even at 10 hours, it hasn't settled really into my fine lines or like my smile lines, my wrinkles, none of that. So I feel like even though this is a very glowy foundation, it still handled my oils pretty well. It stayed together, stayed put. And even though there's a little bit of wear and tear, the fact that it's sheer coverage definitely helps mask that. I don't know if I would be saying the same thing if it was a more full coverage thing because it would just be more noticeable. As far as powder versus no powder underneath the skin tint, even now I don't really see a difference. So you can try it to see if it helps, but for me, it didn't really make a difference. So I think you're fine either way. Let's go over the pros and cons of this foundation because it's a mixed bag. So the pros, I do think that this is relatively oily skin friendly. Usually this glowy with oily skin isn't the best match, which I will talk about in a con that I have of this. I do think that overall it handled my oils pretty well because it's not like breaking up crazy. And I do think it's acne skin friendly because it's not clinging onto the dry patches of my acne all weird. It's not breaking up all weird over my blemishes. You know, for the most part, the coverage has stayed. So I do think that it's acne skin friendly and relatively oily skin friendly. The fact that it didn't settle into my smile lines is great. And it does well with touch-ups, at least blotting, which is a plus because I do think with this foundation, you're gonna need to do that. Which leads me to my cons. So the first con is that even though this foundation wears well, you will have to, at least for me, this is all my experience, you will have to blot probably more often than you're used to because this is so dewy. The thing is, I like a natural luminous looking foundations, but you know, there are different levels to that. And this is the far end of the level that is acceptable to me. So when my oils come through, it's already too shiny for me. So I would see myself blotting every 3 to 4 hours just to maintain the same level of shine as I did at the beginning because it's already at the end of what is acceptable to me. Does that make sense? Whereas I've had foundations that are still luminous, but not nearly as luminous as this one. So when my oils do come through, it's still an acceptable range of dewy on my face that I don't feel like I have to blot. Whereas this one, we're already starting off at the max of what I think is acceptable. I feel like I might be confusing you some more. I'm just gonna trust that I explained that decently enough that you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Basically, the con is that you just have to blot probably more often than you are used to with this foundation. With that being said, I don't think I would use this alone. I really like the idea of using this though to add a little bit of extra glow to foundations that I would like a little bit more luminosity, just because like I said, it is a little bit too glowy for me, but at the same time, it's in the name. So like I can't really fault the skin tint for that. I was warned ahead of time that it would be glowy. I just didn't know how glowy it was going to be. You know what I'm saying? So I would definitely use this to mix in with my foundation, which they do say in the directions that this can be used for that. But alone, I feel like it's just a hair too shiny for me. Maybe I would consider this in the winter because I probably wouldn't have to blot as much and my oils aren't as prominent. But in the summer, I would have to blot this way more often, so that doesn't sound like a good time to me. I also wanted to say that this really reminded me of the Glow Lust by Samantha Ravndal. What is it? The Auric Glow Lust. I would say that this is a comparable dupe because they both have that same type of feeling, like it's a little bit sticky. You can wear it alone and it kind of just cancels everything out and gives you this radiance over the face, or you can mix it into your foundation. You can add this as a subtle highlight. Both products are multi-use, and I'm aware that this is expensive, but the Glow Lust is even more expensive. So I would say that even though this is expensive, it is the cheaper dupe. So if you're interested in the Samantha Ravndal Glow Lust, I would try this one. And also this GloWish will give you a little bit more coverage than the Glow Lust. So there is that. That is it for this review. I hope that it was helpful, insightful, or at least entertaining. And if it was, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and feel free to comment down below what other types of videos you'd like to see from me. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I would love to see you come back. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next one.